Hey students, welcome to today's lesson on adding and subtracting fractions. So let's get started. Put on your set of headphones and let's zone in. So before getting started, let's just do a super quick orientation on the terminology used in fractions. Now, on the top, we have a numerator. On the bottom, we have a denominator. So in this case, x is the numerator, y is the denominator. Now the main question that will be answered in this video is how do we actually approach adding and subtracting fractions? Well, it's pretty straightforward once we have a framework. Step 1, we need to make our denominators the same. Step 2 is adjust your numerator accordingly. And step 3 is simplify. Now in this video, we're going to be applying these frameworks to 3 of the most common question types that you will see. Starting with question type number 1 is adding and subtracting fractions that have the same denominator. For example, if we have 2x over 3 plus 7x over 3, you can see here that we have the same denominator of 3 in both the fractions. Whenever we have the same denominator, you can combine both the fractions under that same denominator. So for example, this would be 2x plus 7x all over 3. And as you can see here, we've combined that fraction. Now these specific question types are the easiest of the bunch, because we don't need to change our denominators and we don't need to adjust our numerators accordingly. We can just skip to the final step, and that is to simplify. If you've watched our addition video, this concept in the numerator will seem very familiar to you. So let's go ahead and simplify this. 2x plus 7x, that is equal to 9x, and then that is over 3. The final question that we should always ask once we simplify our numerator is, can we simplify this fraction even more? And you can see here that 9 over 3, that can be simplified to 3. So overall, our answer will equal 3x. The exact same process goes for subtraction as well. Let's have a go at doing one of those type of questions. 10a over 4 minus 6a over 4. Now in here, again, we're going to make sure our denominators are the same, which we can see that they are. And given that they are the same, we can combine them under a common denominator. So for example, it will turn out like this. 10a minus 6a all over 4. And from here, we can go ahead and simplify. So simplifying our numerator, we get 10a minus 6a, that gives us 4a divided by 4. And then that final question that you need to ask yourself, can we simplify this further? So looking at our numerator and denominator, we can see we have a 4 on the top, a 4 on the bottom. They are both going to cancel out. And in that case, we just get left with a. Moving on to the second question type, this one is to do with adding and subtracting fractions that have similar factors. Now, for example, if we have 5y over 6 plus 3y over 2. Now here, you can see that in both fractions, they have different denominators. So our first step tells us that we need to ensure that these denominators are the same. Now the way that we can do this is first by asking, is one of the denominators a factor of the other denominator? You can see here that 2 is a factor of 6. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So if I was to change just this denominator, I would need to multiply this by 3 to make it equal to 6. That way, both fractions will have the same denominator. Now the rule goes that whatever you do to your denominator, whether it be multiplying, you also need to do the same to its numerator. So like we have multiplied the denominator by 3, we would also need to do the same to the top. And that just ensures that the fraction that we're dealing with remains completely the same. So if we go ahead and simplify this, we get 5y over 6 plus 3y times 3, that is 9y, over 2 times 3, 6. So you can see here that the denominators are the same. And from here, we can continue out to merge the fractions together. 5y plus 9y all over 6. So all coming under a common denominator. From here, we simplify further. Let's look at our numerator. 5y plus 9y. That gives us 14y over 6. And again, the final question, can we simplify this further? Now, looking at the top, we have a 14, and on the bottom, we have a 6. So let's see, if we divide both of them by 2, we get 7y over 3. And that can't be simplified further, so that is our best answer. Let's do the exact same process for a subtraction type question. 4b over 4 minus 2b over 8. Let's do the exact same thing. Both fractions have different denominators, so we need to make sure that they're both the same. In this case, 4 is a factor of 8. How many times does 4 go into 8? It goes 2 times. Whatever I do to the bottom, I also need to do to the top. Let's rewrite that. We get 8b over 8 minus 2b over 8. Now from here, all we need to do is merge it under a common denominator. So for example, that will look like 8b minus 2b all over 8. And then we go ahead and simplify. 8b minus 2b, that equals 6b over 8. And the final question, can we simplify this further? Have a look between 6 and 8. If I divide both of them by 2, I get 3b over 4. And that is the simplest fraction I can get to. Now moving on to the final question type, these fractions, whenever we're adding or subtracting them, they neither have a common denominator, nor do they have factors of denominators that can go into each other. So for example, it looks something like this. 2x over 3 plus 4x over 7. And you can see here that 3 and 7, they're not the same, and they don't go into each other. So how do we actually solve these? Well, we use something known as a butterfly type method. In here, we actually multiply the denominators like so. We then multiply going across like this and across like that. Now this looks a little bit confusing, but let's go through it step by step. So first, let's go ahead and multiply our denominators. Now 3 and 7, when we're multiplying them, we get an answer of 21. So that is going to be our denominator for both fractions, like so. Now the next bit is, let's work with the left fraction. We have this 2x. This 2x is going to multiply by 7. 2x times 7 is equal to 14x. And the same goes on the other side. This 4x will multiply by the opposite denominator, so this 3 over here. 4 times 3 gives us an answer of 12, and we have an x, like so. And here you can see this allows us to have common denominators and ensure that we're also readjusting our numerator as well. After this, let's combine those fractions together. We get 14x plus 12x all over 21. Let's simplify our numerator. We get 14x plus 12x, that gives us 26x over 21. And let's just ask, can we simplify this further? Now, when trying to work this out, we can see that this is the simplest form that this fraction can be in. So we leave it as is. Let's do the exact same question type now, but now focusing on subtraction. In this question, let's say we have 6a over 8 minus 3a over 5. Now, step number 1, remember, we need to ensure that our denominators are the same. Step number 2 is to ensure that our numerators, whenever we're working with them, they get readjusted accordingly. And the final step is to simplify. So to make these denominators the same, let's go ahead and multiply both of them together. That way, we get something like this. We get 5 times 8 on both sides. 5 times 8 gives us 40. So kind of you can fill in the blanks after. Something over 40 minus something over 40. After this, then we go ahead and cross multiply. So this 8 will multiply with this side over here, and this 5 will multiply with this side over here. If we go ahead and do that, we get 6a times 5, that gives us 30a, and on this side we get 3a times 8, which gives us 24a. So here we've already completed steps 1 and 2, that is ensuring that both denominators are the same, and number 2 is readjusting our numerator. Now let's go ahead and simplify. Simplifying by combining the denominators together, so we get 30a minus 24a over 40. Then after this, we need to ensure that we simplify our numerator. 30a minus 24a, that gives us 6a, and then over 40. And the final step is to ask, can we simplify this further? Now, I personally like to work in twos, so dividing by 2 and keep going until I've reached the most simplest fraction. So if I go ahead and divide by 2s, I get 3a over 20. And then obviously you can't divide 3 by 2, so we just leave that as is. Can I divide 3 by 3? Yes. Can I divide 20 by 3? No. So this would be the simplest fraction. Now let's go ahead and put this into practice with some practice questions. Alright, hopefully you had a go at doing some of those questions. Let's go and see how we can approach them. So starting with question number 1, 5x over 2 plus 3x over 2. Now here the first thing to check, do we have the same denominator? Good thing is we do have the same denominator. It makes our lives a whole lot more easier. Now, with the same denominator, we can combine the fractions under a common denominator. So in that case, we will get 5x plus 3x all over 2. The next step is let's go ahead and simplify our numerator. 5x plus 3x gives us 8x, and then add in the denominator over 2. And the absolute final step is to understand, can we simplify this even further? Now in this case, 8 over 2 can just be simplified to 4. So that way, this fraction can be simplified to 4x. Let's move on to the second question. 2a over 5 plus 4a over 10. Now the first question we need to ask ourselves again, do these have the same denominators? In this case, we can see that they don't have the same denominator. However, we can see that 5 is a factor of 10. 5 goes into 10 2 times. So if I was to change this denominator to equal 10, all I would need to do is multiply this by 2. That allows me to achieve the same denominator in both fractions. Now remember the second step. We need to readjust our numerator accordingly. So if we've multiplied our denominator by 2, we also need to multiply its numerator by 2 as well. So let's go ahead and let's write out what the appropriate answer would be. 2a times 2 gives us 4a over 5 times 2, which gives us 10, plus 4a over 10. Now here we can see that we have common denominators, so let's go ahead and merge them together. 4a plus 4a all over 10. And then the final step is to ensure that we're simplifying accordingly. 4a plus 4a, that gives us 8a over 10. And let's again ask ourselves, can this be simplified even further? The answer is yes. This can be simplified to 4a over 5. Moving on to question number 3, we have 7b over 4 minus 3b over 5. The first question we need to ask ourselves again, are the denominators the same? In this case, they are not. Are they factors of each other? We can see that no, they are not as well. So in this case, we need to use something known as the butterfly method, where we multiply the denominators like so, and then we need to cross multiply like so. So doing this, we get a denominator 4 times 5, which gives us 20. Imagine your minus sign is still there, over 20. And we'll fill in the blanks accordingly. Now 7b times this 5, because it's cross multiplying, 7b times 5, that gives us 35b. And on the other side, we have 3b times 4. That gives us 12b. And then we simplify again accordingly. Let's bring those fractions together under a common denominator. So all over 20, it would be 35b minus 12b. Let's simplify that numerator now. We get 13b over 20. And then let's ask ourselves, can this be simplified further? In this case, no, it cannot. This is the simplest form, and as such, we leave it as is. Now moving on to the final question type. This one is an extension question. We have 4x minus x over 2. Now you're wondering 4x is not a fraction. However, you can turn this into a fraction. 4x is the same thing as saying 4x over 1. And that way you can turn this into a fraction and work out this question accordingly. In this case, the first question to ask is, are the denominators the same? They are not. However, let's ask, are they factors of each other? We can see 1 can go into 2 times. And the way we can do this, if we multiply this denominator by 2 and multiply the top by 2, the denominators will remain the same, and we will adjust our numerator accordingly. Let's go ahead and rewrite what it would look like. 4x times 2 gives us 8x over 2 minus x over 2. You can see the denominators are the same. Let's combine these denominators together now. So we get 8x minus x all over 2. And then let's go ahead and simplify. We get 7x over 2. And that is the simplest form that it can reach, so that is our answer. That brings us to the end of the lesson. If you found these techniques helpful, give us a comment in the chat. This is Alex signing off for now. Stay sharp.